What can historical figures as varied as Winston Churchill, Franklin D. Roosevelt, Mark Twain, or Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart have in common? It turns out that each and every one of them were members of the largest secret society in the world, the Freemasons. Also known as Masons, this group operating in the highest echelons of power from the shadows has always been one of the objects of fascination for historians and specialists. The society boasts the participation of some of the world's most influential personalities and has maintained its secret rituals since its inception and throughout the centuries. In today's video, we will try to tell you what this organization consists of and what its role was in World War II, an event in which they were vehemently opposed to the Nazis. Get ready for a journey back in time to the most exclusive and confidential backstage and catacombs of history to uncover all the mysteries surrounding Freemasonry. Welcome once again to Military History.
Whenever there is a scandal involving Freemasons, whether financial or political, it always rekindles the fantasies, the fascination, the curiosity for what remains a strange institution. Strange because it came into being 3 centuries ago, because it follows rituals born in the 18th century, using talismans, and it gives the leaders pompous titles.
We've just heard from a journalist specialized in the secret society featured in today's episode. Let's briefly explore what it's about. Freemasonry, often shrouded in a veil of mysteries and myths, is an ancient and discreet brotherhood that has left a significant mark on history and culture. Although defining it in precise terms can be challenging due to its secretive nature, this group is essentially a fraternal organization dating back to the guilds of medieval builders. In its early days, Freemasons were craftsmen and skilled workers responsible for erecting majestic cathedrals and iconic structures. As it evolved over time, Freemasonry became a lodge that incorporated ethical and moral principles, as well as deep symbolism and rituals in the form of ceremony. The organization is organized into lodges. To properly define the term, these are local units where Freemasons gather to conduct their rites and discuss fraternity-related matters. Although not a faith, Freemasonry promotes tolerance of other creeds and requires its members to believe in a supreme being, regardless of their specific religious affiliation. We can then understand that it is an organization with a profound spiritual sense. One of the most intriguing elements of this cult is its distinctive symbolism, which includes building tools such as the compass and square, used metaphorically to teach ethical and moral lessons. Additionally, members of the organization often identify themselves through secret signs and greetings, significantly contributing to the aura of mystery surrounding it. Members of the group have been subjected to criticism and condemnation by some religious authorities since its inception. In several cases, leaders of different churches expressed their rejection of Freemasonry, arguing that its secret rituals and discreet nature were incompatible with religious teachings. In particular, the Catholic Church issued several statements throughout the 20th century, discouraging Masonic affiliation, even going so far as to prohibit membership in the church for those who were part of the fraternity. Throughout history, Freemasonry has attracted numerous prominent figures, from political leaders to artists and thinkers. However, its secretive nature has given rise to numerous conspiracy theories, a fact that fuels the idea that the organization has a secret influence on the most important global events. As mentioned in the introduction, its unique symbolism and rich and mysterious history have contributed to its enigmatic reputation, making it a fascinating subject of study and speculation among the most recognized historians and specialists. Many conspiracy theories and fascinating plots surround the narrative that tells the history of this brotherhood. However, none have been fully proven, which reinforces the mysticism of this select group. As expected, Freemasonry did not escape the impact of World War II especially in the context of Nazi Germany. The link between the Brotherhood and the Third Reich was marked by harassment and repression. This was because Adolf Hitler's regime considered the fraternity as part of an alleged Judeo-Masonic plot aimed at undermining the foundations of National Socialism. Since the Führer's rise to power in 1933, the Nazis implemented a series of laws and policies aimed at eradicating any influence considered contrary to the regime's ideology. This organization, along with other social organizations and groups, was a target of this repression. Lodges were closed, Masonic assets and properties were confiscated, and many members were arrested. Persecution in Germany intensified with the onset of the war. The Nazis linked the fraternity to alleged international conspiracies and falsely accused them using propaganda to defame and discredit the Masons. Additionally, in the Europe occupied by the Reich, affiliates faced restrictions and persecutions as brutal as those on German soil in countries such as France, Belgium, and the Netherlands. Let's see how they looted the properties of these countries, according to the following testimony from an expert historian.
They had set up a research center for Masonic studies in two large Masonic buildings of two of the largest German Masonic lodges in Berlin that were taken over by the Nazi regime because Masons were one of the first to suffer in Germany. These buildings became the headquarters for the Gestapo. But in the basements, they set up bomb-proof shelters for the libraries of the materials that they had collected, first of all from lodges all over Germany, and then of course from France also, and from other countries in the West, Belgium, the Netherlands.
In concentration and extermination camps, many members fell victim to the Holocaust. The Masonic symbolism, rituals, and their supposed connection with Judaism made them targets of the Nazi repressive machinery. However, despite the persecution, some managed to resist clandestinely, maintaining their values and principles even in the most adverse conditions. It's curious that during World War II, Hitler's followers pursued them as if they were a partisan threat. What the Nazis sought to destroy and segregate was the ethical sense of fraternity among people they openly considered inferior. As the Führer consolidated his power, it was not surprising that propaganda and hostility towards the Masons increased. In Mein Kampf, the Führer expressed in his own words that the Jew used Freemasonry as a tool, claiming that Masonic lodges were completely under the spell of the Jews. Based on this prejudice and discrimination, various lodges across Europe were shut down to promote terror and set an example. All assets of the members were confiscated, and those who held prominent roles in any institution or place of power were dismissed. In addition to this repression, the campaign against the Masons continued to grow. Articles and cartoons promoting the Judeo-Masonic conspiracy, spoken of by the Führer, were frequently published and distributed throughout society. The plan was to culturally segregate them. These announcements spread the idea of a conspiracy between Masons and Jews to rule the world. They broadly depicted them as two sectarian, closed groups thirsty for power, willing to trample society to take over the planet. Defamatory posters proclaimed, "All Jewish Masons, all Masonic Jews," without distinguishing between Hebrews and fraternity members. In support of their media campaign, Hitler ordered the translation into German of a Russian anti-Jewish and anti-Masonic book known as the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, and promoted its mandatory reading. This narrative spread throughout the territories occupied by the Nazis. In 1943, the French released the film Hidden Forces: The Mysteries of Freemasonry, revealed for the first time on screen. The plot follows a young man who joins the Masons hoping to revitalize his career, uncovering alleged conspiracies between Jews and Anglo-American countries to bring France into war against the Germans. In Spain, the situation was much graver. Many Masons fell victim to brutal murders. and in 1940, those identified as lodge members faced imprisonment and possibly death sentences. With hatred unleashed and propaganda intensifying, most of them were forced to operate clandestinely, holding their meetings in secret, even more so than they already did. One of the Nazis who detested and felt repulsion for this lodge was Reinhard Heydrich, head of the security police and SD, or security service, in the 1930s. He channeled his hatred towards the Masons, considering them, along with Jews and political clergy, as implacable enemies of the German race. Heydrich advocated not only for eliminating any visible trace of the Masons, but also for eradicating the Masonic infectious residue that remains in the unconscious of many. The hatred was visceral, and he was willing to exterminate them. The secretive and sectarian practices of the group, similar to those of Nazism, sickened the Nazi hierarch. Let's see the beginning of a meeting to understand the phenomenon. This aversion and desire to eliminate the Masons from Germany and Europe led Heydrich to establish a special section of the SS Security Service, known as Section 2-3, dedicated exclusively to the persecution of members of the organization. SD personnel shared the belief that Masons exerted real political power and shaped public opinion through the press. According to these Nazis, they used their influence to foster subversion and revolution. However, as the war approached, restrictions for former Masons in Germany were relaxed. Soldiers were scarce, and the Führer could not afford to be selective about strictly Aryan militias. Thus, gradually, they were allowed to assume roles in the military or public positions exceptionally. Some were even granted service as officers, despite the prohibition on joining the Nazi Party. This is another of the many hypocritical actions carried out by the Reich, which did not hesitate to betray its ideals for convenience, using the lives of the inferiors as a tool. Despite the recruitments, in countries under Nazi control, Masons continued to face persecution. Heydrich and his team forcibly dissolved organizations of this kind, confiscating assets and documents, and killing their members in the most extreme cases. Lists of members were drawn up to create catalogs of personal files, putting them under surveillance or sending them to concentration camps. Another of the many blacklists of Nazism. While denouncing a member could save your life, these practices went against the behavior of the Mason, as shown in the following testimony of Oscar de Alfonso, the Grand Master of one of the most important lodges in Spain.
Nosotros, cuando nos iniciamos, juramos dos cosas. Una, nunca revelar la identidad de otro masón sin su consentimiento. Y segundo, nunca revelar lo que se produce, lo que se hace y lo que se practica dentro de los templos, en los rituales y en las ceremonias. Los rituales iniciáticos y las ceremonias tienen carácter secreto.
On October 28, 1934, the Nazis promulgated a decree categorizing Masonic lodges as hostile to the state, declaring that all their assets were subject to confiscation. 1 year later, the infamous Reichstag fire decree directly ordered the dissolution and confiscation and destruction of the belongings of all Masonic groups. These draconian measures extended to the territories occupied by the Reich, unleashing the looting and destruction of numerous lodges. The confiscated objects were used to set up anti-Masonic exhibitions in various European cities. The first of these exhibitions was organized in Germany in 1937, followed by Paris in 1940, and subsequently Brussels and Belgrade in 1941. The exhibition sought to instill fear, hatred, and mockery towards the Masons. Through recreations of lodge rooms, clearly distorted by the Nazi organizers, they attempted to show a supposed connection between Masons and Jews. Hebrew symbols were deliberately placed in these displays to imply an alliance between the two communities. Skeletons and skulls were incorporated to play on the audience's fears. The idea was not only to promote terror among the fraternity members, but also to issue a warning to all those who might intend to defend this cult. More than 176 propaganda films many taken from the exhibitions of the Eternal Jew in Germany, were screened. Commemorative stamps were even issued, making it clear on every letter that Jews, Masons, and Communists were marked as enemies of the Serbian people. These grotesque exhibitions served as instruments of manipulation and persecution during one of the darkest periods in European history. As for the Allied side, Freemasonry continued to be a significant brotherhood for some of the most prominent members of society. President Harry S. Truman, theoretically a Mason, maintained his active participation in lodges even during his tenure as President of the United States. Truman received the 33rd degree while in office, evidencing his firm commitment to the organization. Likewise, Franklin D. Roosevelt himself was a member of the cult and attained the 32nd degree. This ranking system by numbers symbolized the character's importance within the movement. However, not only the presidents of the United States were involved with the organization. Prime Minister Winston Churchill joined the Masons in 1901. However, his participation may have been more of a family obligation than a genuine desire, as his family had a long tradition of activity in the Brotherhood. Churchill did not progress much in the order and significantly lost interest as he advanced in his political career. It is truly impossible to determine if his time in the lodges had any impact on his view of the Nazis and World War II. The military leaders of the Allied side also counted prominent members in the fraternity. General Douglas MacArthur, American commander in the Philippines, along with Generals Omar Bradley and Henry Arnold, were all Masons. Although their membership likely had little impact on their combat strategies, they expressed affinity towards the difficult situation of their fellow brethren. Among this select group of figures facing the Axis and supporting the Masons was none other than the British royalty, which contributed money and resources to rescue members of the group. However, even these strong ties had limited reach to protect fraternity members in Germany and the occupied territories. It is estimated that between 80,000 and 200,000 Masons lost their lives due to their membership in the lodges. We must clarify that this number is very imprecise, in part because Hitler and his henchmen made sure to lump Jews in this group together as a common enemy, making it difficult to determine individuals who were killed strictly for being lodge members. In the midst of the war, Masons around the world made notable efforts to contribute to the war effort and support those in need. In Illinois, lodges were pioneers in establishing Masonic service centers aimed at providing support to men stationed at military bases. These centers not only provided entertainment and recreation, but also offered essential comforts to Army members. From hot meals to community events, everything was designed to help people disconnect from the worries of war. It's important to note that these institutions were open to all uniformed militias, regardless of their Masonic affiliation. In addition to these local initiatives, the Illinois headquarters sent letters of support to brothers abroad, conveying a message of encouragement and pride in representing the fraternity. Countless correspondence was sent and received with gratitude by soldiers worldwide. The funding for these centers came from local Masonic lodges, which generously and systematically donated money to support these noble causes. In England, these headquarters also played a fundamental role in supporting the war. Brothers of the fraternity donated their jewels to finance the war effort, raising significant sums of capital. However, their contribution was not limited to financial resources. During the nighttime bombings, the Freemasons' Hall became a preferred shelter for those seeking refuge. Even a greenhouse was built over the Grand Temple to grow fresh produce, providing an oasis of support and solidarity in times of adversity. The idea behind these actions by the Masons was also to dispel some of the mystery and secrecy that characterized them, and to try to gain sympathies in times of conflict. With the end of the war, Freemasonry in Europe faced the task of reconstruction. Closed lodges sought to reopen, and the fraternity worked to recover its archives and reestablish its international connections. Over the years, they have managed to stay united, adding more and more members to their community.
Estos ritos iniciáticos prácticamente no han cambiado nada desde la Edad Media hasta ahora. Y es aquí, en lugares como este, donde a través de los símbolos, a través de determinadas ceremonias masónicas, se otorgan una serie de conocimientos y de privilegios a aquellos profanos que han querido entrar en nuestra orden.
The history of Freemasonry during the Second World War in Europe is therefore a dark chapter, but also a testimony to the resistance and tenacity of a brotherhood that has endured over the centuries, and that not even the visceral hatred of Nazism could eradicate. We are reaching the conclusion of this installment. We look forward to reading your valuable comments and appreciate your participation. Thank you for sticking with us until the end, and we look forward to seeing you in the next episodes of Military History.